How are you guys? Welcome back to Wargaming China. And today I'm gonna have a chat, and it will be the first in a series of presentations I'm going to do about hybrids in Chinese service. Now, following the Wall Street crash of 1929 and into the 30s, many armies around the world had become aware, many arms manufacturers around the world had become aware that there was no money on the market anymore. Times were hard. So companies such as Bofors, Skoda, Bohler, Siderius, Schneider, etc. all turned their design crews to designing a weapon that could be considered an infantry gun and an anti-tank gun. Now, these would have a lot of appeal at first when you think about it. Oh, that would have a lot of appeal. A gun that, you could have dual purpose for. But because the two guns would depending on the design, some guns would have one barrel over another. So that one carriage would be carrying two barrels. And then there were variations on design that I'll get into. Now, at first that seems like a good idea, but it doubled the amount of carriages that an artillery unit would require, because it would have to carry two sets of ammunition. So, funnily enough, many of these guns that the Chinese did end up order, just say off the top of my head, the Skoda 47mm, 75mm dual gun with two barrels on the one carriage. The Chinese ordered it on separate carriages. But we'll get to that another time. Right now we'll get back to the Model 35. Now the Model 35 was a design of the Kapfenberg plant of the Bohler Arms Manufacturing Company. Now Bohler, the original design was in 44mm. 6 guns were produced in 1935 as prototypes in 44mm. Now, these guns were bought by the Guandong provincial government to serve with its Opium Suppression Bureau. Now, opium suppression in China was a very hazardous business, and that's why the Opium Suppression Bureau required policing artillery, as it was known. So police artillery at 44mm, serving with the Yunnan Opium Suppression Bureau. So the gun could be fired, or was usually fired, by removing the wheels and resting it on its cradle. However, this wasn't necessary. The gun could be fired on its wheels. Now the gun design would then progress to 47mm, and in 1937 the Chinese government, central government, ordered 100 of these of the M35 from Italy, and by the end of 1937 both the 100 guns and 30,000 rounds of ammunition had arrived in China. Now, the gun itself is very interesting because the M35 not only served in China, but it served with the Soviet Union in very small numbers as the M35B. It served obviously with the Italians, where it became just ubiquitous for Italians. It served with the Germans under the designation 4.75 centimeter pack. But funnily enough, when the British first decided to do airborne operations in 1942, they took a good look at all the guns available and decided that the M35 would be the best option to equip their airborne forces with. So after a few modifications to the sight and by putting a shoulder stock on the back of the recoil message, like it was a setup like the back of the 6-pounder, they had a durable gun. I don't know whether this gun got into service in the West with the British paratroop forces, but because I'm far from an expert on anything to do with the Western Europe in World War II. But it would be interesting if somebody could confirm that. I got that from Chris Bishop. He's not usually wrong, but I've never seen any photos of it. So as we can see, the 4.7mm Bohler M35 certainly got around. Now, getting back to it in Chinese service. So the Chinese, this gun was in service with the Chinese army from 1937 up until the end of 1945 at least. We know this because one of the first things, the Chinese were always requesting ammunition for these guns. So they must have been in service. They were definitely in service with the Third Army by the end of the war, by the end of World War II, and the Sixth Army would take these with it into Burma as part of the Chinese Expeditionary Force in 1942. Now, we know this because, or I know this because there are photos of the Sixth Army at Cold Mountain, and there we can see the Chinese forces using the gun as a mountain gun, because in Chinese military use, the gun had three uses, not just the two that it was sold for. It was used as a mountain gun, it was used as an anti-tank gun, and it was used as an infantry support gun, an infantry gun. Now, in the anti-tank role, it could fire. It was capable of penetrating 43 millimeters of armor at 500 meters, so it was pretty effective as an anti-tank gun. In the mountain gun or infantry gun role, it could fire a 2.35 kilo projectile, 7 kilometers. The model that we're looking at is from Merleton, and the figures are Emha and Revel. So, as I said, there are photos showing this gun at Cold Mountain, and there are references to it at the fighting around Tongyi and Lashio. Now, that's the Sixth Army. I believe it would have served with the Fifth Army too, but I have no photographic evidence to prove that. But I do punt, so I'd punt that it did serve with the Fifth Army, but I can't confirm that. But I can confirm it did serve with the Sixth Army as part of the Chinese Expeditionary Force in 1942. Now, hope you enjoyed that. Nothing much more I can add, except press like and subscribe. See ya.